In our thousands, in our millions, we are all Palestinians. What does it mean to say this? There are many Black South Africans who could give you a much deeper answer to this question. But unfortunately, you're stuck with me tonight. I'm grateful for the opportunity to think together with you about this as a member of South African Jews for a Free Palestine. I grew up in South Africa in the post-1994 era in Yeovil, a neighborhood that was historically Jewish, but was increasingly composed of working-class African and Eastern European immigrants. It was home to GLOW, the gays and lesbians of the Witwatersrand, which was one of the main social forces behind the enshrinement of gay rights in the ANC's Bill of Rights in 1993 and the Constitution.
Speak up, please. We can't hear you around here.
Okay, is that better? Okay, so do you want me to repeat that last sentence? Okay. So I grew up in South Africa in the post-1994 era in Yeovil, a neighborhood that was historically Jewish, but was increasingly composed of working-class African and Eastern European immigrants. It was the home of GLOW, the gays and lesbians of the Witwatersrand, which was one of the main social forces behind the enshrinement of gay rights in the ANC's Bill of Rights in 1993 and the Constitution in 1996. And it was home to chacharach and governable music, to kwaito and reggae and jazz. I remember seeing Palestinian solidarity posters on the streets, in gay rights marches, in music venues, and in my local community library. It was everywhere. A small, insistent beat in the rhythm of a broken and traumatized people, partying like there was no tomorrow, and daring to dream fiercely. This expression of solidarity was derived in part by a shared political history of resistance to apartheid, which bound Palestinian and Black South African struggles together. It was also derived by a recognition that the Israeli and South African apartheid regimes collaborated closely on trade, weapons, and nuclear technology, and that the Israeli government helped South Africa to inflict horrific imperial violence on the peoples of Mozambique, Angola, and Namibia. But the solidarity was also underpinned by an intellectual history of theorizing apartheid as a distinctive form of settler colonialism, sometimes called internal colonialism, or colonialism of a special type. It includes many of the features of ordinary settler colonialism: an economic system of land theft and labor exploitation, a legal system of racial segregation and discrimination, a psychological system of dehumanization, a fortress of soldiers, police, and prisons to entrench all of this, and a symbolic order in which oppressors seek to cast themselves as eternal victims and their colonization as a righteous biblical act. Unlike colonizers in Canada, Australia, or Brazil, however, who had engaged in such large-scale genocide that there was an irrevocable demographic transformation, the peoples of Palestine, Algeria, and South Africa were still present in large enough numbers to present a real political threat to white colonial power. As a result, colonizers and colonized were locked into a relation of violent segregation and interdependence. Many of the key theorists of internal colonialism were in fact Jewish communists, including Harold Wolpe, Ruth First, Joe Slovo, Ray Alexander, Raymond Suttner, and Ronnie Kasrils. These anti-apartheid activists were not only persecuted by the apartheid state, but they were also ostracized and demonized by the Jewish community and subsequently written out of South African Jewish history. Indeed, the Jewish community was generally complicit in apartheid in South Africa and increasingly supportive of apartheid in Israel. Today, key establishment figures, including the chief rabbi and officials in the South African Jewish Board of Deputies, have tried to claim an anti-apartheid history for themselves, while increasingly resorting to hate speech against Palestinians and Black South Africans, and all but calling a name for regime change in South Africa. So there are distinctive internal dynamics and contradictions in our solidarity. There are also limitations, not least that many of us in South Africa are ignorant about Palestinian culture, politics, and ideas. Palestinian solidarity with South Africa is as deep and complicated as our solidarity with them. But tonight, I am ashamed to say, I cannot speak with knowledge about this. Indeed, it has taken me very long to understand that our shared solidarity was also part of Third World internationalism. Palestinian and South African freedom fighters met, trained, and strategized together in newly independent Algeria, alongside comrades from Angola, Vietnam, Cuba, Yugoslavia, Guinea-Bissau, Syria, Mozambique, Egypt, and Black Panthers from the United States. They worked together in Bandung, in the non-aligned movement, in the Tricontinental, and in the Group of 77. Under the leadership of Kwame Nkrumah from Ghana and Michael Manley from Jamaica, Third World societies engaged in a series of sustained attempts to democratize the United Nations and begin the long march for economic decolonization. These struggles were violently suppressed and ultimately betrayed. And today, this history of freedom dreaming has been all but erased. Palestinian thinkers have urged us to pay attention to the specificity of the Nakba as something entangled in apartheid, but also historically distinctive. And the unfolding genocide in Gaza has given renewed urgency and seriousness to this intellectual demand. So the solidarity between Palestinians and South Africans cannot be understood as emerging from some superficial one-for-one apartheid likeness. No, it is not this. It cannot be this. Instead, it is our shared history of dreaming that has nourished our shared solidarity. As the poet Don Matera wrote before he passed, this song, Beloved Palestine, is for you. Sung from the deepest soul of Africa. I think South Africans increasingly understand that the genocide of Palestinians is only possible because of the support of imperial power here in the global north. It is only possible because the United Nations is not democratic, and a handful of nuclear powers in the Security Council act with impunity. It is only possible because we live in a world where transporting bombs from England to Israel is legal and good, but transporting people from Somalia to England is illegal and immoral. It is only possible because the great majority of people on this planet are not treated as human. They are exploited as workers, they are dispossessed of land and water, their ecosystems are destroyed, their languages and sacred arts and knowledge systems are killed. Their health and education systems are defunded to pay hedge funds in London. Their societies are invaded and bombed. They are starved with impunity. And their very attempt to raise a democratic voice is belittled and condemned. Passport apartheid, vaccine apartheid, climate apartheid. The genocide of Palestinians is only possible because we live in a system of global apartheid. We are beginning to see then, slowly, all too slowly, that Palestine is the beating heart of the global South. They are our conscience. They call to us as South Africans. We have failed in our project of decolonization. We have failed at home, and we have failed across the global South. This is why people in South Africa increasingly say, from Cape Town to the sea, Palestine will be free. Here in England, I have been chided more than once for centering the genocide of Palestinians to the perceived exclusion of all else. But this is a narrow and superficial understanding of the ties that bind. To stand for the right of Palestinians to live, and above all to live with dignity and respect, is to assert that we are all human. It is to recognize we are none of us free until all of humanity is free. It is to grasp that solidarity isn't about nice words. It is about action, and about whether we are willing to face up to the real demands and consequences of anti-colonialism, whether it is in South Africa, in Palestine, or indeed here in England. It is to say, in our thousands, in our millions, we are all Palestinians. It is simply to freedom dream. Here tonight, as we dream together, I ask all of us to reflect on 3 questions. Why did the UK government stop its support for the apartheid regime in South Africa, but not Israel? What can we do here and now to hold UK institutions accountable for their role in genocide? And what can we do here and now to support UNRWA and the more democratic institutions within the UN? And after we have reflected, I ask that we act. I thank you.